An appeals court in Georgia has now officially agreed to review the decision to allow Fulton County, Georgia DA Fani Willis to remain on Donald Trump's election interference case, despite her romantic relationship with the special prosecutor, Nathan Wade, who has since been removed from the case. Now, this will delay the case even more, handing Donald Trump yet another huge win. And make no mistake, these stalling tactics, delaying the case was the point all along. Now, back in March, a Fulton County judge ultimately decided that Fani Willis could be allowed to continue to run the case if Nathan Wade agreed to step down, which he did. Judge Scott McAfee found that there wasn't sufficient evidence to firmly prove Willis financially benefited from her relationship with Nathan Wade. Remember, that was really at the center of it. Okay, they're dating. Fani Willis chooses Nathan Wade to be the special prosecutor. He obviously gets paid to be special prosecutor. And then the two of them go on trips. During the investigation into conflicts of interest, they said, no, Nathan Wade didn't pay for my trips, according to Fani Willis. I reimbursed him with cash, so there's no paper trail of it, which of course was a little suspect. But nonetheless, the judge ultimately decided Fani Willis can stay on the case. Trump and other defendants had argued that their appeal application that McAfee, or in their appeal application, that McAfee was wrong not to remove both Willis and Wade, writing that providing DA Willis with the option to simply remove Wade confounds logic and is contrary to Georgia law. And last weekend, Nathan Wade actually gave an interview on ABC in which he largely defended his and Fani Willis's actions. Let's take a look.
Workplace romances are as American as apple pie. It happens to everyone. But it happened to the two of us.
So you said you didn't want to violate the public's trust. I'm curious, do you think that you've done any kind of damage to this case?
None at all. None at all.
Even the public perception of it?
My private life became the focal point of the case. And my private life has nothing to do with the merits of that prosecution.
Donald Trump now is trying to get the judge's decision overruled. We'll find out in a week or so if Fani Willis gets to stay on the case. Do you feel, as we sit here today, that this case is in jeopardy?
Nathan Wade does not feel that the case is in any way in jeopardy.
Well, an appeals court in Georgia does think that there are valid concerns worth reviewing. So in a brief order on Wednesday, meaning today, the court said it will hear the appeal from Trump and others challenging the ruling from Scott McAfee, the judge, that allowed Willis to remain on the case. And this decision means yet another delay to the trial in which Trump and his co-conspirators are charged with violating Georgia's RICO law. Here's some more on that.
The fact that the Georgia Court of Appeals is going to review this decision with respect to whether or not Fani Willis is conflicted out of the case means that this case is not going to trial before the election. So yes, there are legal consequences to this, but this is all about looking at court calendars and overlaying them on electoral calendars. And we can view this as a win for the Trump team. Not necessarily, let's remember, a legal win. The fact that they agreed to hear the case does not mean that they think Judge McAfee made a decision that amounts to reversible error. It means that they're taking the case and that now everything slows down yet again.
Pausing here to deliver some honest truth as we do in our news coverage as well. TYT is facing challenges, guys, as the entire industry is. You know who could make the difference? You. If you hit the join button below, it's gonna make all the difference and keep us in business. We appreciate you, thank you.
And in his order, Judge McAfee said he planned to continue to address other pretrial motions regardless of whether the petition is granted, and even if any subsequent appeal is expedited by the appellate court. But Trump and the others could ask the Court of Appeals to stay the case while the appeal is pending. And I would venture to say that is what Trump would want to do, John. And this has kind of been the tactic in pretty much all of the cases. They're looking for ways to delay.
100%, which is why when, like under normal circumstances, you can make that distinction between whether this is a tactical win and whether this is a legal win. But when the only tactic is to delay, it is a legal win. It's a legal win in the exact same way as the Supreme Court taking up the absolute immunity thing months after it should have is a win, regardless of what the decision is. Like, it honestly, at the end of the day, doesn't really matter. Now, this is a state level case, so he doesn't necessarily have the exact same ability to just snap his fingers and poof goes Jack Smith or whatever, or the classified documents case is just done. He can easily do that in those cases. But in this case, you then get into, with the state level ones, if he is president by the time it is concluded, then we get into really interesting political grounds in terms of what if they say he has to go to prison and now he's already moved in to the White House. So what's gonna happen? I mean, look, we've seen that judges aren't willing to enforce a gag order on him, but we're expecting that they're going to enforce, no, now you have to go to prison and you've already been elected. And so I'm angry at all of these judges, the appeals court judges, Eileen Cannon, but also, as we've talked about for a very long time, Merrick Garland and some of the DAs that waited way too long. Like, if they had moved expeditiously, even these stalling tactics wouldn't necessarily have bought Trump the freedom that he's looking for. But instead they waited and they provided an assist to these people who don't want to see justice be done.
Listen, I get that I'm supposed to be furious with Trump and his legal team, but Trump and his legal team are doing what they're supposed to do, right? Like, you shouldn't be surprised that they're engaging in stalling tactics. Of course they're doing that. And by the way, Trump has a lot of experience being sued, going through various court proceedings. He's had a lot of practice. So what you just said, John, I really, really want to focus on here, because I'm speculating here, right? But to me, it feels like Merrick Garland kind of sat around and did nothing until it became clear that Trump was planning to run for president again. And then all of a sudden you have all these indictments coming out. And look, every trial has delays, even if it's not a trial against the former president of the United States. If you've ever been sued, and I'm talking about civil court in that case, sometimes lawsuits can take like several years, right? There are always delays. There are always issues, all these challenges from the other legal team. So this is something that should have been expected. And I hate it, because I do think that Trump did terrible things, especially with taking highly classified documents and top secret documents home with him and refusing to return them after he had multiple opportunities to. And of course, the election interference case. People think it's just about the rioters on January 6th. But it's not just about the rioters on January 6th. By the way, the rioters themselves have faced some pretty tough consequences for what they engaged in, whereas the guy who incited them to engage in that behavior has not really suffered any tough consequences. And in fact, it might not suffer any consequences for the fake elector scheme, which is much more serious in my view than the riots that took place. That was the actual attempt to steal the election or overturn the election. And so I'm really mad at Merrick Garland, and I'm mad at the Democratic Party for playing this the way that they played it. They should have pursued the criminal charges as soon as they could, and instead they did delay. And I think in the end, what's gonna happen is, if he does get elected, there's a good shot he will, John, he's going to pardon himself from the federal cases. And then when it comes to the Georgia case, he can't pardon himself. But do you really think they're going to keep prosecuting him while he's in office? They're not. They're going to freeze that case.
Yeah, look, I would say, I don't even think, like, for him to pardon himself, I mean, he could do some sort of preemptive pardon, but for him to pardon himself, to me, it implies that we at least get to the end of this process and find out exactly what he did, and then he can pardon himself. But I don't think we're going to get to that. I think he's going to remove Jack Smith. He's going to put an absolute toady in charge of the DOJ. It literally might be Stephen Miller. And all of these investigations will be gone. Literally everyone involved will be fired. He'll never even have to pardon himself, in the same way that they will never have to go on TV and admit, we were right that there is a two-tier justice system. It's just set up in a way that people like Donald Trump will never suffer any consequences, no matter how many crimes they commit in plain sight. They'll never have to admit that he's pardoning himself. It'll all just disappear. They'll get everything they want, and they won't even have to admit that the system is set up to protect the powerful.
Yeah, and at a time when an increasing number of Americans have lost complete faith in our institutions, if things play out the way that you're suggesting, John, and I think that you have reason to believe what you just said, I really do fear for what it means for the future of the country and any trust left for our institutions. So we'll see how it plays out. Right now, I mean, look, it's been a fantastic week for Donald Trump in almost every single one of these trials, okay?
Yeah.
The classified documents case, indefinitely postponed. It was supposed to begin, that trial was supposed to begin on May 20th, and now it's unlikely to begin until 2025. So a lot going on. Obviously, there's some stalling when it comes to the Georgia case. There's a lot going on.
The hush money case,
yeah,
theoretically.
Yeah.
Look, honestly, I fear what this could mean for the country, but I fear what it could mean for you. I don't think you don't want to talk about this guy for 4 more years. And now things are lining up that you're just gonna keep. I'll do it. I'm in for a penny, in for a pound. I don't think you want to have to do it though.
John, there's a lot of things I don't want to talk about for the next 4 years
true.
that I will be talking about for the next 4 years. But
that is true.
It's called Life in the Big City.
If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.